Ambon, but John, where there? Obo, my chidom. Medasi. Okay. Yabatwaso, the studios of Angel 961. Honorable Patricia Apia J, my memoir quabadi di kind crama.
Oh, Bejo, so
Patrona Pomia, dear.
I no pay dear, a radiadum.
The older the beautiful, the older the better. Always looking very spot on. Yet for a child pay.
Ah, yo, Miss Mitchell for you now.
I am here beside Uncle Pon say, Hen and Munya Saho, Deno, Wope say. Yeah, but to see it here in some few minutes. Accra, Abruchri, Asokwa, Abrupa Junction Stadium. Yana Hodeno. The movie a general while and Tiasi.
The chair, a number video of the chair. If you ask you, as a bar, a wood trimmer, Tabby out Namata San Frama.
Okay.
Sad that here. Neighbor, somebody would trim so dear. When Namasa also. If you are seeing that,
it's me after 2 nanti crowd. Yeah, that's it. Mama Pat said, I don't have friend and our trust and any team come kakra. Now, we are flanked by 2 personalities. Mama and mom also acquired by in a small way. Nipi, Olivia, my also man is as Olivia Bocode. What the Mike and cry her baby. Ambon, but John, where there? Obo, my chidom. Medasi. Okay. Zoom straight to action. Ma, minim parliament. Sesia, mekane say, mo difficult moment amunya as minority ni ana.
Medasi. The year can they say, in see 2024. Ye to abadi we. My neighbor say. Yay, near ye dom cassia. I shall see with 169 votes, about 137 by 137. I fed a swati whom echo 80, first grade 88. I feel some got to about swati, a whom about 87. And yeah, a dear insida, a beer sida. The Kaiser, yes, started. South Republic. Yes, started first parliamentary young participating as a party.
Yeah, 92.
Yeah, course second one, no, yeah, 67. Okay. And wow, winning 69. Yeah. Na dom kumapa, but at the same time, the quality of MPs are never. You registrants and or Dimu Akotene.
From 69.
From 69. Na enya asam ketwa.
Okay.
Nia yehu ye say omutimi sorry jinai. Ma government no eja. Ema ni hunu say with the policy be ba. Nyese with the policy be na de ba keke. Na mom ye be scrutinize. Ebe hwehwem ne hu say ade ebe boa Ghana fo nti me hu ne say ye minority no ayete ho no akoye bibi sa say minority na ye wo ho no wo ma ye wo nipa nko a 47 say wo mo eye afufuro kra.
Okay.
And adada no so kakra bi adada no ye ne 4th term, this 5th term, this 6th term. Okay, cry, I'm saying rude. Now the 2nd term, no, the 3rd term, no, and no, the baby count. But the year when they say, Yejina Brani, Brani Ejina, and they say, Brani Ejina said, Nipper woman, Yinano, Ubia, a wooden name, dear from Kwa or their support, and Nuntina. Yet Sasia Nissania ye ho kekantiano, a D mighty minority, a de atoye. A D ube hun say dom kumadie, as ye jina brani. Ye she say nipa ho enti any war parliament, ye represent a month for a worker. Enti a hu here say a month for no interest, ye be protected at all times.
Okay. Kamia say meka say minority there but am represent Ghana nyina say almost every bill bia na discussion bia because of parliament bia you hear the voices of the minority. Say abato oba no mbeko the defeating side kura they would definitely make their case. Ama obi ate omo nka say na na ye kire. Ma me nyina so misa say tribunal belly say na tinti amode mo say enkabe ya osan famra baki na mo na mo betimi a kire yimu yi yete mo nka ya na bi o ha ye ntem ase ye say ade ya de ko na ade ye say pese ye di cases intem na ye nya tribunal beboa ya minority for mo se mo ntiase ba am say mo na ya na mo ntiase ne nti ma me ti o
monim say tribunal wo abakosem kakra yewura Jaijon ne breno ana odi president
soja ban ni mo
obaye so odi soja bye no tribunal ne seti ye ma me no medwadifo ne enkrofo bre papa ebi kura wi na tribunal ne eye ade bi a na enye se judges akuku damakesie bi ena tena so ahwe niema no ama yesisi ni ye omo ye pass bill na yetumi edi ye adwuma nyina but na anko yesa enti ewo very big scar na say etwa surunku bi ewo Ghana fo
timu okay
say ye pese ye di tribunal ne ye adwuma de ewo se sa etwa no yetimi hwehwe mu yeyi sa niema ni firi ho mani panya abotoyem se
nye dada
ye kasa ye de ye adwuma de enya dada no
tete de na ye tise hu bi
enti ade ne yanto ye boni yehwem
okay
na ubehwa tribunal bill se hu America ye de ye nipa tena ma no kodura najo ahumachi ansa na ye passe na ye hu ne se niema bi wo mu a ye introduce ya ne ye bo hu enkomo ya tuyebo ewo hu enti eye ade ba ko ne se atemwa afo ada se yifo a ye passe ye do wo mu ye adwuma no tribunal no eye nipa wo betena so as chairman no nko a eno ye nipa oye wa didwuma bi se lawyer koti otembuafo
okay
high court level obetimi atena so but nipa na aka nyina enka enti nipa ewo adwene po bi se enti eba ne sa ofi se ye betimi ebu aten kronkron ama nipa ombe apie enka eye adwene pa se ye benya bibi dia facilitate but yen hwe structure ni ye yen hwe ade we tribunal no exist ewo ye constitution mu since 1992
okay
adentina ba bia ba won't be mfanya edu afenna ye be because ekutwa no wo ho
okay
ena fenso niema na ye be tutu ne de aye adwuma no eno so ewo ho nti ayete se u bebie kuro dada bi so
okay
ama ehu ene insecurity abeto man eno ne ade bia nti ye kasa yentu yebo
okay
se de be ye adwuma kura yentu yebo ne hwehwe ne ma bi mu yiaza.
Okay, that's it. Me read over through the minority scripts ni be about one thing. Now one session almost N70 be say the entire session almost the back for further review and whatever, and they say almost cry believe we say then I court systems I hold one problems in terms of facility and the personnel no expand there no more go na hold one with tribunal
no can factors no no say other na from that angle so but as a dom kase na si
omabu oma ni agusokura
oma yo oma dwene say the etie bia was say tribunal no woman introduce ye. So by your constitution na 1992 constitution no. Sabra no na soja aban ena tiso ena nipa nyina ka say yanko constitutional rule na ya democracy no yanchase mane engina enti eba ne sa no sade ebeya opanyin na otiso no na kuma beto de yemama niama akoso no yegyina yewedi adanse embre bia na yewra hoy no no omo kyerɛkyerɛ constitution ne mo no omo kan sɛ niama ne bi wɔ hɔ a te sɛ saa tribunal omo yɛ de please papa na sɛ de bɛyɛ na koma ɛbɛtɔ ne yam ama yɛtumi apase ne yɛtumi akɔ constitution democratic rule na yɛtumi de ayɛ adwuma nti ɛne anya ne nyinaa wɔ constitution ne mu ɛna wɔ sɛ yɛhwɛ na yɛyɛ ebiom so wobɛhwɛ a da saa bill no yɛbɔbɔ ho wɔ America tuom me hu ne sɛ ɛdɔm kɛseɛ no deɛ ɔmo hu ne sɛ ɔmo numbers ne nti
the bully all the
time. Time be a person. But yeah, dear, no. And yes, I na tra opposition tea be was say opposition Debbie. Yeah, pes Ghana for Bibia na Ghana nipe woman any or mining tea and the yeah. To your mining can't call in the year, dear, general and son, opposite for opposing sake. Yeah, functional criticism. And no, and the bit to me, and yet dysfunctional criticism, and ye use it. Dysfunctional, no, and no, not just a yard papa, I yet. But see, yeah, too much alternatives. Bet to me, aboa ama emra, and then near my yeshana akoye.
Okay. Therefore, Honorable Patricia J. Asokwa MP, and a Deputy Minority Leader in Parliament, and a Edin Komo. Now, share the very bills, no, air pass, no, almost so a viewer, or more air can ever home any idea. On this one. Mame ensa move to nano pay a person buy in a bako. Kojo pon chroma cry e kan hwasem. Or say speaker fra or frame back no. Or any mo say there will be some correction in the cocoa board bill. Minim say the New Patriotic Party actually many times say omni cocoa for ekoni ye pa me kire kuafo. It is enka bill bi abaseya. Utiemu abeka senka mbi before the woman in nyane maye yes 70% of whatever you be nyane ade kra buy ho na minority for so omontiasi ubechirem kakra ma na yehunu
cocoa bill no ade bia yenyina yehu se de cocoa fu adwuma ye no asi akono afa yewo I'm say one of the strong a woman cocoa farms no the ownership and one of the things almost galamsey or mining near mana abefemu no sa niema mienu no e was here sheni ye pa na nkwaye because ownership of the land no a part of the system.
Okay.
Na me kaisa ye kase obibia wo koko and mining is a separate institution.
Okay.
Almost mra. But I will build musa 50 kilometers away from and this is who mining.
Okay.
And one ye na what emrano one shanani ya ubetitia and crofo emra nyama bebre e wo mu a me fi se e betumi aboa na ye timi a make sure se ye tenetene no ama ye tumi e de aye adwuma se de fata enti e ya ade a me fi se ehun hia na 5 days na ye ko no menim se bills be aka ho bills human sexual rights and family values.
Okay.
And then you find LGBT, and no say it was said, recession. Na yetumi san ba bobo na mo nyina mo beje atumu se sa niema bills yi nyina no ye di America ye kwaka na akoya asem
ahware so pa
anadwo wa can you imagine say nipa atena parliament efri anopa kosi anadwo ahomache no mienu enti nyame boye no wa hunu se human mind they do time be ebre enti was ye nya ebre etumi ye sade na ena ejina sasam no so ena ma ye standing orders no ye consider bills. There is always a third reading. The third reading no ye brand said 24 hours and pass by the consideration stage and sana ya to me asenti na ya pass sa bill. No is to give us time to reflect on enema ye di ho achinie bebre because sa wo ye nipa we tie parliament pa e drew time bia e ko gina one particular clause ho be 2 hours ni e debate was a clause no na chesa I problematic. Enti ebanesa na afe ye ba into consensus. Sanya mani nyina was here reflect. Okay. It is a wusan jina so na on the same day. Ye pass it a year your friend is the third reading na adwene kakra. Enti me hu ni sa bills ya enunti e ma ye frɛ ye nyina no. America so a womama ye de yes ade no enne pene a woman pene a woma dwene ne se bill bia minority ana amendment bia minority beba no e wo se gange se shooting it down no eno na ma sa ne ma we se nyina aba enti ehu hia se ye behwe sa ne ma no na ye de aye adwuma.
Okay. Mama, that's it. I'm saying, for the sake of time, there's parliament issues. Watch them said, Mama, only do straight to Yampauchna, Ashanti Region MPP elections. Of course, Wakoye leader, na a back caucus for Ashanti Region MPs, Udimakotan, and meaning say, Ubenya Futu Kakra, now Ubenya Kasache Kakra, they are my delegate, and of course, the organizers in Bibiana, and no more smooth in tea. Mamintiu.
Yo. Ye beda ye etiefo ase na ye MPP fo a etie ye nyina we regional elections in the eko enti se me was kumase ha se ya na asante memfo na me kasa e de akiremo se ni amepese MPP ni bia hunu ni se e was so tenase na wo assess baby agina.
Okay.
Baby, I jina say
critical.
A hen ye jina. And a quan ben so and a ye befa. A baby ye jina ye betty me every ho. Ye waha and a nipa over 2.4 million. Crowing yina, esse and tuaba. Yanye a niema baby and no more a jina honsa. And the sad disaffection. A dear Namana Banata. And did ye hunu a casa de ma obibia ne se MPP ye yanka boom.
Okay.
Nipa bebre and tea and nemans inside and carbon a hia papa. And it's a ye yanka bomudia. Na baby I was say no. A can't be so no or see a danano. And my hunu say ye hian krofo a sabe omo nim de omo ahofama omo akwan a omo ni nipa edi nkita ho sa krofo no ebetumi aboa ama MPP agina titru MPP your constitution ye de ye adwuma nyina when betumi ade ahofama bi ahwe ama kura ekuo no agira brane ade a ye nim a ya kasa ho ebra ye to abane wieye eye nchichemu a ewo party dem nchichemu da wo party dem no why ne betumi aka nipa dom no abom by the actions of moye enti enya de a ye ba betie se we beka se mitumi ni we nya adwuma mitumi ni we nya adwuma se nipa no wo ahofama wo ahoden a obetumi anye adwumaden ama yewura baomia enya 80% of the vote in Ashanti region there. And found ne baby ojina. Na baby ojina ne dia mimi hunu ne say yina ye MPP for.
Ojina MPP na mu. Yes,
ye wo akwanya ba akopɛ ne yedi ye flag bearer. Nti ye flag bearer wia ono na ye ton no. Dia ka bia ye nyina ya so die se ye adwumaden edebeye. Enti kasa bi eti se min se moja bi ewo mu a anye baomia moja minti ase because ye nyina too many ehwehwe se ya kasa nye too many ehwehwe na enyuma hodo a yewura akofo ado shase a ewo se ye yema edi adwuma ba edi obrapa ba edi good health eba say mama meto aso magana fo nya ahoto na ye me nwanwa because there was say hun say fie mienu ni ye komu ye o e de mpa na ba we aye ye de ahoto ebrega na fo
o si market bi mpo
e de chese wo dwene ho a untimi ntiase but ye good initiatives policies ekwan bi so me meltana menka yo se bibia ye bia na ye
of course yeah
ekwan bi so but ahokyere enso ka ho bi ahokyere o nye ye na create a natural disasters ene ewiase emu ensem na badi aba but niema wo se ye magana fo di ni yie no ya to na saram no ya de bia ehun ya enti MPP ye here and say afanu why no betimi aka
you been a leader and answer some no tibia na hamo say na we on kan ho we say ne
ya de ha dwene bebre da wo be dia dance e sonko e de agire say be ba Asokwa na ho nyamre sa o
yeah
enso kakra ani edi keka ye humbo mo di abedru baby ayewo di aka bia so di yesense rade be me ye ho adwene ne ahoden na etumi aye saade no edi eho hia sesa nkrofo no omo wa ahofama omo wa adwempa omo bo odokese obetimi creative resources obetimi aboaye amma yetumi edini ye ewo 2028 abato onimu na Ghana for nso edidi because they say ade ye tinka ye se ne ma ekoyie dollar wo form we wo ye friend say inflation wo form and so ye hu
asemo
ye hu no wo to ye nim sa ne ma ne any economic student be a chosen what's that
a reflective
way after this year when sa enti ehu hia say ye be ye real digestion ye hunu ekwan apan de wo hin na wagina so obeye yi fa mistakes into ho because aban bia ye mistakes
okay but I say Mama Patricia PJ MP de ma Asokwa ti say
Radiado Asokwa pa efisa Asokwafo abra bebe fa konwa ne se MP be Asokwa no bia nim se de ne yakwan esitie but through me intervention yetimi aboa ama Asokwa ene yakwan ni bebre na ye yentimi mfaso no ene da so yo mini abrofo no mse ekwanitu ebe faso yo te no an
kwasem ne se ya yeti atonsu nom ene gia sempotamu ni ade ebetimi akase no kwasem ni
no kwasem
oba friend say obefa Asokwa adwa no kwansem de wabobi em se kane ba ko ane ehunu no onyina bedi mu adanse bokro de bia ono aboma so kofidwuma no da hwa na ehu akwan but em say GRC high school nom ene atonsu presbyterian potamu de na monsa no ama omo ehunu kota nim say enwie
na me amindim say ade ba kwa ya na nkrofo di mu agi na mese o say MPC onye development project but MP facilitate development project munyina ube di adanse say Asokwa bebae no me catch am say ye kakeye me ho na enomo aye
okay
try a team
the argument for municipal no?
Yes it ye coin agi sade no eno na facilitate your development as state so witness our vision na better na what you mean
na just say attitude in crony be free Kumase ho no
yes
na e was o fight for
e was me fight for even titibo no Asokwa was the last one I had to free because na enkrofo bi kunsa ye ma Asokwa free because KM ho no na Asokwa no omunye omusika kese
okay
say America say ball yi wo ho ye na high enso so KM na eji hu sika abato the same thing KM na eji hu sika enti ube hunu say ye pese ye the effect of ye in eba ye tie ye ho no aboa ye papa na no so ema ye to mean secure World Bank loan eno kan na ye de ye sa ekwan ni nyina eba ye na ye ka say ye DCC dwank ye be si dwa taga na ho ahia ga na akwan da ho
okay
na we die mi giram se ya anya kwaya skano de ene ye hunu nanim
okay
and me chief executive so agree on that because infrastructure and ma kro ye ma adwuma ekoso ma sa ne ma we nyina enti obi to no kan aye a me say asa wonte ne ye friends city development monte eniema eniema bi ekoso enti me fa ne say nya hwe kura no awurade ehira me amasa eniema we nyina within my term etumi abaso said ye kanwa no enti yakwan de se mitimi hu se aba we ba ye no ekwan ni bi portals develop ye hwe your friend is Korea edasu na hiso
okay
ya kwa yi nyina da mo se ameka so obo nse gravel so gu bia e wasanki etumi di tintim so ma ekwan ne emuda ho as we speak da ho da ho
obi aja
nse ebrenu na ye kasa mama ba na ntena so ame anye ye niema na nkoda nima ye ho be kire ye
okay
akwa bia ni ho a ye ewo enkronkro so awana Asokwa at this point that but me go so me pia
okay
say na hiso de anya hwe kura na hiso de say de be ya o man ye mboka nguo
yeah na sem ko fa so na gata no hu se yi kama na mfutu
man ye mboka ngu keke na ye nye ye hu nya hiso de ye hu no say e wo say ye tu anamon ema sa akwan no ebededa ho
okay Mame Emrai na meka se onyuma ne de se de meka se 13 years ne 3 times ne achiri no onyuma bebre na ya te area ho de nim but say ebrani ni honti no recently your visitation be I think it was on fire service right
yes
yeah te ye hunu adekoro because onye bi say na okọ na ya twa ne purusi ana say dwuma de be pote na ekoso a by our regional headquarters, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, a regional headquarters by our district office.
The same place.
The same place.
Okay.
Now, our Hosama or this district office, almost be Popo Chuabi. And no dear, yes, your measure say, Omo office, your bedroom, and the Abasobody, ma, Yura, Camel. Say, Wakakoma, sir, about the Mesra, and say, Enquire, and no Casa Keke. Now, or day or see a mayor or yo. Now, my a crona, a warhorse, and a fire service, and a woman. Me, I make Benanaya when you're the baby called your first chapter train. On the this assassin or no atra watch it at the fire service for na mimi when they say a privilege my say ye war bibisa institutions are a way assassin enti kakra ya call ye na baby a die woman si die si won so from nyina basa enso ni nyina no kakra ye improve ni ye bisa about fire tender say a dosu maintenance ne eho enkeka ho wo behwa kroma say afibia ejashisi ye bawo adentia because e drew hamatana na afi enema ayebasa
na yabetena
na ye nti e woman pesia so de e wose me hu se omu eteso no omu ni how omu niema omu ye nyina because ye kasa wo represent nipa ewa Asokwa o represent ene ni niema nyina ewo and of parliament so it ba ese ye discuss issue about fire tenders, fire outbreaks, and all those things. It means me try or munyanka say a way region team, but me call ye no so me who at the papa and so or more
okay.
Yeah, war ye near Ankran Crabia or no why na juni say a form nasam na me can no or baby sisi. Sa nipa no ye pese me ni dinkita ho na ye hwe se obeche ono na kosiesie ye fence police headquarters.
Oh wow.
Enti so obeye fire there abro omodia na wo se bi hye cry na ye hwe ekwan ya de befa so ye betibi aye na regional commander na aba no me bona ba so pa e bi se wo ani so ade hu kase oba mi hu ye no me koye no ye me hu se nipa dom na wo ho no anije bia bo omomo o manya rehemu se e obi e pese o ma eho eyeyi enti wo ba ye wo no ani initiative wa make sure se wa fire band e betimi aboa wo mo when me nyina a generation of fun
yeah
say ye wo sa bandi wo ho a Asokafo baby o be bia no Asokafo ye you or mo ye de you be to be ababa but a pillar wo ye ne say the instruments ni nyina no mo no sa na me ma show bo say erade ye madoma ye tie bia no ebe ye nti Asokafo muntie tay ye benya fire band kese ebe to me ebe boamo ewo mo social activities nyina eti ye hu ne se sane ma we no nyina no eye ewo se mi hu na ye can be hu asema na se ewo se mi bisa hu question ewo parliament or the floor of parliament ma wo mo niema ekoyi a ebetube hu but o ka sembi to makoma so say fire tenders wo ho no a dozen and so at any point there over 40 your friend say you were over 43 offices centers share na say
original
and now or fire tenders be 13 or so me figure but at any point in time bebrebe na wo ho ne emu be tripe na ya na enye adwuma enumpo se asaya enye adwuma
okay
now ultimately put all those numbers in place na utumi enya be 2 as a 3 as a margin of error. I mean, said my ding and warrior, especially with maintenance, because in the ana and non a hydrogen into Bereno, a jashishi be air co baby no, na no yenya fire tender monka, oka you water hydrant point or more say one person almost sano because the wahano and go for quatraso a ton idea. Eje do time one more hwehwe na afa akwaye de nti wo mo de ebe gina ho a obi antumi enko
the original so they bought regional commander wa banaba so no
oh ne what just the wo aniso ade hu a o de eye na djuma a me fi se e wo se ye boa no e ma ekwan bia so no na djuma na o ye no e peja na ye timi boa ade ba ko so abeka ho and say for your security and ne omoko digital
wow
enti Asante region baby a o mutimi hu baby a camera ebobia o mutimi hu activities e mi ko gina wo hwe bi enti say bibi to miss park here immediately. Your core control room, and I was highly impressed.
Oh, wow.
I improve papa. Into another, so be to fire service for men, you what for number no 2 trim. That time, I said the unborn devil. And a man who said they were born so a costro and church so costro into time beyond last 2024. No, cause incidents of fire was Ashanti region. A year 1071.
Okay.
And so about 2025 and about 1031.
Okay. I reduced by 400.
And who say additional course enti eno an de betimi aboa ama yenso yeja hihie nsem na akofo
Matias me dan se am se enkomo we de se obekaya a ebre bi o show ya so yedi sa enkomo no na directly Dompase police station
yes
ema am se na unam kwamu a wokọ ho yenya ne ntia se o visit ne de koduru ho edru empembezo be
oh say ade ya bod dan no so abrosana abem ama yehu but the ayadwene
okay
and say ye baby ye baby ne na say ye be commission
adan na wo tv no
no and there was no ya peja no nti ayadan mu ya betimi afire district headquarters
okay
Asokwa police station amuhu ne sad divisional command
okay
it is upe the district commander bibi kitwe be omusha na kitwe bi mu wo enti hanu betimi aye divisional command enti ye nyina district command sorry
it is a district number
enti ye kasa ye ka say ye IGP betimi ahwe sade no wetimi aboa ye ame nya di district command ye betimi apia ana personnel because I dear way see ho kunta no dependum pe na ye adwuma wo
oh
me kai wo me baye obi frɛ me baye mati binso obi frɛ me se ma menya problem me call police station obi eni ho o munyina no mo koye wo madwuma o ma adwuma no awo bedana ni pendum die ntime ma ne ho nti yes IGP be de fasa akwanya iso ese Asokwa meba na naso na mabesra no se Asokwa ontene ni hwe ye kakra ebi se na ye nyamo amani panyina hu se Asokwa bi wo ho nti krono no apagya ne mu wo ho ba ye ama ya ade bi a wo mo police fo wo mo so mebo ma baso na se krono apagya ye ne yi crime sakesia ni ye kum grofo no ene wo matimi achi mu nipa ni bi
okay
nti menim se adwumade no wo mo ye yes wo mugusu ene wo mo ye nti me wo hwe all these year ade a koso wo mempeso aso a ɛma me anigye ɛfiri sɛ mempɛsuasofoɔ wɔn security anaasɛ wɔn ahobanbɔ ɛyɛ adeɛ bi a ehia me Asokwa ahobanbɔ ɛyɛ adeɛ bi a ehia me yie paa enti ɛno nso so ɛyɛ adeɛ a ɛboa apart from ɛgyahyehyɛ yɛwɔ ahobanbɔ nso ɛwɔ gyidie ɛwɔ the security personnel na wɔn nso so ɛwɔ Asokwa no mu enti mmoa biara ɛwɔ sɛ yɛso yɛtumi de boa no me ɛno ɛna me so me gyina hɔ ma wɔn sɛ bɛyɛ sɛ adwuma no.
I'm say kakra inim the security some there Mahama Patricia page since 2013 a obey MP security some there betimi adi ho dance say wabo modern because nioma minim crowd ya mema Asokwa divisional command ne ade motorbikes among others if say what they are here pa
generator
among so many others before say ya na here na omo no tie nso one thing I like about that no omo no tie nti ama na Asokwa asomdue no me ba na do last words etwa sem me bre no ya akona fe wa hwe de ebetimi aboa bia bia opese ofa bia menim say but just say, lecture, okay, but say, Mr. Ampon, this way, Uncle Pardon, very spiritual, Matthias.
Yo, where the Mefa Quenya so Madam was somewhat tear me, now Asokwa mine, and me so made the massam to yanim, and ne ye chief executive Fufra or ye Juma. A Juma na, oh, ye no. Me when say ya set agenda near the man say on fanya juma but you were near my bebre ewo hon so a Miss Friend say obetinani na watch and yet the local government another Ministry of Finance asset ya man say on yankwa and there was all ye say I make say me kuwait for and for ensure ya bomodi a brand yaba was on a pipe ni nyina say the aka and say a month for a bit yesika na o matumi a connect sense you ama omo obia we use bo ho minya ikada enam bola na wo ho ninti a form ensure enye safe for drinking
okay
enti yes pipe na ya le no me fi say e was say ye ho nhye na ye hwe say de be ya obia betumi atua bi amanfo me futo kakra de ma o say wa bom modern asidan kase say ti kakra na de beje na wakwaji nsupa no mama wa brabo ayede no eno wo nya wo ntu ho anamo ya na mente ase
okay
edan no de asi ho wa hwe ye na wa hwa ma wa apomudin anya yia o de beba ne se obewu ajadan no ti ye bese se ata ahokeka no me ba na mini chief executive aba kan ya hwe ekwan ya mo nyina mo betimi aye na ensuo no a ya le pipes na
ya wait mo bodwana san chechere we course no mo te ase
yes na de ya bodwa kire ho ase ya na Ghana edru tambia bibia ase ye ped
wanya bi oni fie no fie
ye ped free but enya bibia abani niska wode ye adwuma sa edi ye bese ba mon kwanti ma pomudinti e was a bitubufo e was a kwan no so na ye hwe na ye lay pipes na ye tumi e di ye adwuma sana na hisofo de bia mo kwan de ha mi o because me too one more ache edi de ye e bo se ye ma akwan ni nyina deda so kama bia sana mo no ye guso a ye tu.
So you welcome to the headquarters of the NPP. We called you here this afternoon to address a very important matter, that scandal that has hit our nation, and to address the press conference today is
honoring our invitation. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, we have invited you today because our nation has once again been confronted with a serious corruption scandal with international dimensions, one that has placed Ghana under an unwelcome spotlight before a foreign court. The matter concerns events that occurred during the first administration of President John Dramani Mahama, particularly between the year 2024 and 2016. At the time when Ghana was experiencing one of the most severe episodes of power shortages in our recent history. An episode that popularly became known as Doomsday. The New Patriotic Party considers it important that Ghanaians understand the facts emerging from the proceedings before the United States courts. The individuals and institutions implicated in the evidence presented before the court, and the steps that ought to be taken by the Ghanaian authorities. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important to state that we are not here to prejudice the guilt of any person who has not been convicted by a court of competent jurisdiction. We are, however, entitled to ask legitimate questions arising from the evidence placed before the court and to demand that the appropriate Ghanaian institutions investigate those matters fully and transparently. The Holy Rain scandal. According to the evidence presented in the United States proceedings, a scheme was developed to bribe not only government officials, but a relative of President John Mahama in order to push a power plant deal through at the height of doomsday, when what Ghana was desperately seeking additional electricity generation capacity. One of the emails presented to the jury referred to a Ghanaian official who was awaiting his expected payment as waiting for Holy Rain. There was therefore nothing holy about those payments. If the expression Holy Rain was used to describe money expected by officials involved in the transaction, then what Ghana witnessed was not a rain of blessings, but a rain of corruption. One that threatens to expose the manner in which decisions affecting the national interest may have been compromised for private gain. More disturbingly, the matter has now become an international embarrassment for Ghana because the evidence was not uncovered through a successful domestic prosecution, but through proceedings in the United States. How shameful. The evidence before the United States courts concerned efforts by Goldman Sachs, acting through its United Kingdom subsidiary, to secure a transaction for its client, the Turkish power producer AXA Energy Üretim AS, to build and operate a power plant in the Republic of Ghana. For the project to proceed, AXA required an emergency power agreement and the necessary approvals from several Ghanaian institutions and officials, including the Ministry of Power, Cabinet, the Ghana Grid Company Limited, GridCo, and the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, PURC. The prosecution's case was that improper payments were contemplated or made to individuals connected with the approval process. The evidence presented to the court identifies several categories of Ghanaian officials and persons connected to the transaction. So who are these government and public officials under the then President Mahama administration who were bought? Per the record of the U.S. court based on which the conviction was made, the government / public officials and close relatives of the president at the time who were involved in the scheme are as follows. The Minister of Power at the time. He was responsible for this execution of the Emergency Power Agreement on the 12th of May 2015. Prosecutors proved that the conspirators discussed paying $1 million to the Minister of Power and $250,000 to his senior advisor. Ghana Official 1, advisor to the minister. The man said to have been waiting for the holy rain, chased progress, demanded weekly reports, and was assured of his full support and cooperation. Ghana Official 2, Senior Ministry of Power official on the emergency project team, listed as $10,000 on the ledger. The presidential relative. Very interestingly, if you recall the Airbus scandal, there was a relative of the president on the Airbus scandal. And on this one too, a relative of the president has been listed. And in all material situations, the common denominator here is President Mahama. In Airbus scandal, it was President Mahama. And in respect of the Holy Rain scandal, it's President Mahama. The question is, who is this relative? Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most disturbing aspects of this matter is the payment ledger introduced into evidence before the United States court. The ledger reportedly contains a breakdown of payments allegedly earmarked for various individuals and institutions connected to the transaction. The relevant entries appear at page 14 of the court record. Among the entries are amounts associated with Ghanaian public institutions and persons connected to the approval process. These entries cannot simply be ignored. They raise questions that are capable of objective verification through financial records, institutional records, correspondence, procurement documents, meeting minutes, and other official documentation. The New Patriotic Party therefore believes that the appropriate Ghanaian investigative authorities must obtain and examine complete court records and trace relevant payment, beneficiary, intermediary, and decision connected to the project. It is important for us to place in context the circumstance of Ghana at the time when these payments were made. The timing of these events makes the matter even more troubling. The Ministry of Power was established on 22nd November 2014, and Dr. Kwabena Donkor was appointed minister. At the time, Ghana was experiencing severe and prolonged shortages. The minister publicly committed himself to ending DUMSO by the end of 2015 and famously placed his position on the line in relation to that commitment. It was against this backdrop that the transaction under the investigation was being pursued. According to the evidence presented in the United States proceedings, on 20th April 2015, an amount of approximately $500,000 moved from Turkey to Ghana through New York. On 12 May 2015, so let's look at the timelines. Movement of money to Ghana on April 2015, April 20th of April 2015. And then on May 2015, the emergency power agreement with AXA was signed. These days, viewed against the wider evidence, require careful investigation. While questions concerning payments and approvals were unfolding, ordinary Ghanaians were bearing the enormous economic and social cost of doing so. The Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research estimated that the cost of doing so in 2014 alone was between approximately 320 million, representing about 2% to 6% of Ghana's GDP. A separate ISA study involving 885 small and medium-sized manufacturing firms reportedly estimated losses of approximately 250 million during the Doomsor period. Some 280 firms reportedly ceased operations, with approximately 5,000 jobs lost, while manufacturing contracted by about 2% in 2015. This is the context in which the allegation must be understood. While Ghanaian households struggled with prolonged power outages, business closed, workers lost their jobs, and the economy suffered significant losses, there are allegations that individuals connected to the process were seeking private financial benefits from a transaction intended to address the country's power crisis. That contrast is profoundly disturbing. What is obvious is that what would ordinarily be concealed by the NDC government through the Attorney General's filing of nolle prosequi will be exposed on international plane, where there is no NDC government to prevent prosecution or arrange a charade of prosecution. Hence, the lack of deterrence, which has not only emboldened persons involved in such corrupt practices, but has also led to a pattern of embarrassment on the international plane. This point is very, very important. It's important to the extent that we notice a trend where the government is constantly protecting people who are involved in one corrupt practices or the other and connected to the NDC party through a charade of prosecution or not the filing of nolle prosequi or discontinuance to free them. They then become very emboldened to continue with the corrupt practices. These are persons who are connected with the NDC, but their conducts are constantly exposed on the international plane. And in no time, I'll show you a historical trend of how this has embarrassed Ghana. We therefore believe it is necessary to recall some of these instances, not to suggest that they are legally identical, but to demonstrate why Ghana must strengthen its domestic mechanism for investigating and prosecuting corruption. That requires serious investigation in this latest scandal, a pattern that Ghanaians cannot ignore. Ladies and gentlemen, some may be tempted to dismiss this matter as another episode of partisan political disagreement. We urge Ghanaians to resist that temptation. The issue is larger than partisan politics. We are witnessing a troubling pattern in which allegations of corruption involving Ghanaian transactions have repeatedly come to light through proceedings, investigations, or settlements outside Ghana. In 3 of these cases, the names of President John Mahama or his relative pops up. Gassem Skansen. In proceedings before the Asker and Bairu District Courts in Norway in 2007, litigation involving Skansen International, ANS, and its former Africa manager brought into public domain evidence concerning alleged payments arrangements involving Ghanaian political and party interests during the 1990s. The court's findings must be distinguished from allegations or evidence that were not adjudged against any particular individuals. Nevertheless, proceedings exposed issues concerning the movement of funds and alleged political payments under NDC 1 and NDC 2 administration. Maybe and Johnson. On 25th September 2009, Maybe and Johnson pleaded guilty before the Southwark Crown Court in London. to corruption offenses involving Ghana and Jamaica relating to conduct between 1993 and 2001, again under NDC 1 and NDC 2 administration. The company was fined approximately £3.5 million. The Ghanaian transactions concerned contracts for bridges reportedly worth tens of millions of pounds. Amajaro, 2010. The Amajaro matter requires particular caution. Unlike Maybe and Johnson and Airbus matter, Airbus which we shall speak to shortly, there has not been a court judgment establishing criminality against Ghanaian officials in relation to allegations referred to here. What is publicly known is that cocoa buying company by name Amajaro, which had faced restrictions in Ghana following allegations of smuggling, subsequently had those restrictions lifted. And a British cabinet minister reportedly lobbied the Ghanaian government on the company's behalf. This was done through a senior government official who was later alleged to be the vice president at the time, now President John Mahama. In other words, President John Mahama, as vice president, was lobbied by a British cabinet official to get a reprieve for the ban imposed on Amajaro, a UK-based cocoa buying company that was found guilty for smuggling cocoa out of Ghana, as uncovered by investigative journalist Anas and Aremiao Allah Anas. This scandal was revealed by a report in the British media in the year 2010. The Airbus scandal. Crown Court at Savak, 31st January 2020, before Dame Victoria Sharp, the approved deferred prosecution agreement records roughly £5 million in success-based commissions promised or paid to a person the judgment calls Intermediary 5, described as a close relative of a high-ranking elected Ghanaian official over the year 2009 to 2015, who was referred to as Government Official 1. The OSP investigated the matter and confirmed the identity of Government Official 1 as President John Mahama, President John Mahama, His Excellency. The OSP also established that President John Mahama's direct involvement in the deal involved his biological brother, a conflict of interest rules. President John Mahama, the Government Official 1, and his relative were also implicated in this Airbus scandal. The Embraer 190 scandal. According to the former Attorney General and former Special Prosecutor, then as Attorney General, was compelled to set up a committee of inquiry to investigate His Excellency President Mahama over his suspicious corrupt conduct in the purchase of the aircraft, including Embraer 190, and hangar for the armed forces. According to him, the committee comprised William Abua, George Amwa, and Brigadier General Alote. Then we now have the Holy Rain, which is the fifth. Being the Asante Beko case, alias the Holy Rain scandal. This time, it is not merely an allegation contained in the newspaper report or a political statement. A United States federal jury has returned a criminal conviction against Asante Beko following a trial. The underlying evidence concerns alleged payments connected to Ghanaian public officials and a Ghanaian power project. This should compel every responsible Ghanaian institution to take this matter seriously. In view of the seriousness of the matter, raised by the United States proceedings and the pattern that has been captured above, the New Patriotic Party makes the following demands. We call for the publicized independent inquiry into the circumstance surrounding the Aska power project and the allegations of improper payments connected with it. The purpose should not be political vengeance, but one seeking to unravel the truth, accountability, institutional reform, and deterrence. This is extremely necessary because we need to stop this from reoccurring on the international plane. Otherwise, we'll continue to be embarrassed on the international plane. And so it's very, very important we go through this. Through this inquiry, the names and official roles of the persons who handled the ASCA approvals and related processes in 2015 will be exposed. And the extent to which the bribe payments involving the approvals will come to light. The court record reportedly contains payment entries of approximately $120,000, for instance, to PURC. $20,000, for instance, associated with Greatco Engineers. These allegations require immediate investigation. The public inquiry will reveal the identity of the individual described in the United States courts as the presidential relative. This is particularly important because the matter raises questions similar to concerns that arose in the Airbus scandal, where a person described as a close relative of a high-ranking Ghanaian official appeared in the relevant court record. The Ghanaian public deserves to know who was this person. What was the person's relationship with President John Dramani Mahama, His Excellency? What company or entity was the person associated with? What role did the person play in the ASCA transaction? Did the person receive any money? If money was received, how much? For what service or purpose? More importantly, Ghanaians want to know why it is always a relative of President John Dramani Mahama. How his involvement influenced the approval process. The MPP wishes to place on record its lack of confidence in the current Attorney General as far as the handling of this matter is concerned. Since assuming office on the 22nd of January 2025, Dr. Dominic Ayeni, as Attorney General, has been associated or has been keen with the filing of discontinuance or nolle prosequi or abandonment of prosecutions involving persons connected with both the previous government and the current NDC administration. We recall, in particular, the Attorney General's entry of nolle prosequi in matters including the SNIT scandal, the Saglem housing projects case, the Cocoa Board related cases, the Unibank case, among others. These decisions have raised serious questions about accountability, the recovery of public funds, and the extent to which taxpayers may ultimately bear the financial consequences. In particular reference is the Unibank case, which forms part of a wider banking sector cleanup and involved substantial public expenditure. The Attorney General has not only come under criticism for failing to make critical disclosure before Parliament, the Attorney General has failed to make public details of the plea bargain that he purports to have entered into with the accused persons in the matter, thereby fueling concerns about transparency and accountability. Against this background, we do not believe that the Attorney General can command the confidence of the Ghanaian public to independently investigate or prosecute allegations involving officials or politically connected persons of the NDC. The repeated discontinuance of prosecutions involving persons associated with the NDC administration has created a reasonable perception of selective accountability. The Ghanaian people in this circumstance deserve investigations which they can have confidence in. One that is guided not by political affiliation, but by the evidence, the law, and the national interest to avoid or prevent the reoccurrence of such embarrassment on the international plane. Ladies and gentlemen, this is simply not an American case. It may have happened in America, but it is not an American case. It involves an underlying transaction, a transaction that concerned Ghana. The alleged payments were connected to Ghanaian public officials. The approvals required from Ghanaian public institutions. The power project was intended to operate in Ghana. The consequences of any improper conduct were therefore borne by Ghanaians. The minister involved was a Ghanaian minister of state appointed by President John Mahama. The officials associated with the relevant approval processes were Ghanaian public officials appointed by President John Mahama. The institutions whose processes were allegedly compromised were Ghanaian public institutions. It is therefore misleading to characterize this simply as an American matter. It is fundamentally a Ghanaian governance and accountability matter that happened to be uncovered and prosecuted in the United States. In conclusion, the MPP is calling for accountability, not selective accountability, not partisan accountability, but national accountability. We are calling for the truth to be established. We are calling for the evidence to be examined. We are calling for every person who may have participated in wrongdoing to be investigated in accordance with law. We are calling for every innocent person whose name has been brought into public discussion to be given the opportunity to clear his or her name. And where wrongdoing is established, we demand that the law be applied without fear or favor. The time has come to break the cycle. Ghana cannot continue to be a country where allegations of corruption involving Ghanaian public officials are uncovered abroad, while domestic investigations remain inconclusive. We cannot continue to allow the international community to ask questions about Ghana, about Ghanaian corruption, that Ghanaian institutions appear unwilling or unable to answer. The Holy Rain case must therefore become a catalyst for a comprehensive examination of the circumstances surrounding the AXA project, the individuals involved, the payments allegedly made, and the institutional safeguards that failed. The Ghanaian people deserve answers. They deserve accountability. They deserve institutions that protect the public interest rather than private interest. And above all, they deserve a government and public institutions that understand that public office is a trust, not opportunity for private enrichment. Thank you very much. And the tendency mu nyinaa ne sɛ yɛn nyinaa yɛnim scandal bi a aba yɛfrɛ no the Holy Rain scandal. Ɛyɛ Ghana ni aberanteɛ bi a ɛyɛ American brochimam ne ho akɔtɔ adwaa mu ɛsiane sɛ yɛsɛ bra Ghana dum so ne gyina so a nipa ɛte mpenten kwa na mfifire te nipa no saa bre no na yehia power plant na saa power plant no saa bre no enam se na ye ho ayira yenti ye call power plant no through sole source and as single source na enam so masikatua bi baemu enti America for ede omunsa aso abrantie ni mu e wa America ene wadi for yedi na sema manadi for yedi na sema ni di for no yen Ghana for so de na yeye efri say nipa a wonti yedi abrantie asem ama wonadi for no ama na di for no eye Ghana for ebinom yese na omo ye ministers ebinom no omo ye public office holders ana krachi etuetu eskama wo mo enu nti na America abrochima mu krachi no ne ho ato akọ adwa mu enti enedien na ye ya afa ho ye beja ama na kosa akwa anase ebetu ho anamo se ne be ya ekina ebi nsie de enti a ehu hia se yetu ho anamo ene se saa animguasie ato Ghana Edikan in the year 2007, the Gatson Scansum scandal eba so ewo Norway abrochimem. Asabre yese Scansum for tuitua bribes ema Ghana abemu mpanyifo. Ema sabre no eno so ya asem ewo Norway. Etosu mienu sabre no edikan no na NDC for ne wa ban. Ye tosu mienu so si ye Mebe and Johnson. Esi wo afe case no ye di no England abrochimem September 2009. Case ne ba so no eno so saa ye se sikatuatua bi aba ma Ghana mpanyifo e ma Ghana anim gu ase e wo inyiresi abrochimem. Ana afe so amajaro eso de ne ho ebeji mu. Enu koda ena eba scandal so bae. Eti abre bia no sansemi ebeba na akosi wa abrochimem na egu Ghana mpanyifo anim ase na egu Ghana man ho anim ase na ewie kire bia na emrantie na yede wo muko gina court na na se nipa yede wo muko gina court no ya na abrochire court no ebua omofo se omatuatua ketasehye omatuatua damude e de ama Ghana mpanyifo. Case when so abre bi ebesi bia no na NDC for ne wa ban. Nipa omo bo omo nyina nso a ye bobo omo din no ya na omo ye NDC for impanyifo. Entinei President Mahama bra okọ ahomeje ana eba scandal no ebaye. Enei we die abaye na dimisem sabi enya atesem. De ye kan se sanye animguase na adoso wo Ghana so e wa abrochima mu no ye sra ban se onti commission of inquiry na ye mfa hwehwe asem we mu sanye ebeye nsana ho na nipa bia sabi daachi bi ono so pese oye bibi saa no em se onye bio fisese ya anya kwa na ekoso na essence attorney general ni NDC aban on the any se won for di bonia na wa file nolly prosecute no waja wo mu ana se omudi bonia asotwe esese ye de wo mukọ court mi ya twe wo maso essence omo ye NDC fo nti onye nti no ahye won kutupa ama saade no kwa na akoso saa eti se ye nyaa sabi eben se wo no batifie na wonche na so obekwa abonten di okodi bone a nipa bi ebebo no ho ana ombechi o maso na enya asotwe keke asotwe na chi ye animguase a eba Ghana man enu nti na yesrese enei ade we e wose yete commission of inquiry de nti esese yete commission of inquiry hihwem no ebio ene se attorney general owe ni dwumadi a wadie nyina kire se onye na dwen se so bi ye NDC ni a na so wo ye bone a sabi ode ne bekwa akogina court ama asotwe bi abam mo munim se free so oba abam NDC ni bia ye bone a no a file no le prosecute sabi ebirum grant mi di judges atem No ba fa kwan bi so do ma ko judge na nim na judge no kura agya wo mu ye nyina ye nim na ebinum kura nso di judge atem no mo ba kuro ma se ya ni ama mo police protection, national security protection sabi ya sa ma mo ahemfie papa mpoda enti yanyi ni se o ma ne kwan se onye nhwehwemu a obeye nhwehwemu krogen attorney general no onye na wa anya nhwehwemu krogen so a animguase a akoso no eno a na besa akoso enti esre mampanyin se obiente public inquiry, independent inquiry, commission of inquiry na onhwehwa de we mu fi se enye baako pe enye ne baako so a esinie ayeko ayeno ayesa ayenum yanhwe ya dabi Ghana mampanyin nam abrochimemu ana abrochire kuro bi akwache no se odeni kogina trial yanhwe ya Ghana minister bi nam abrochimemu na dabi sene esiwo Venezuela enom ne akan aman bi nso no ye behwe na afi aman bi akwache Ghana man minister bi say ordinate ko stand the trial but si ye hwehwemu na sebe dia asotwe fata no ye dia manoa ebeye nsa na ho se ne ebeye adaache ade a ekosoi ebinsi bio enuti na New Patriotic Party and their friends and trophies chairman demanded said there should be a public inquiry into this matter. Na the who so the who so the udi so na embran so edina kwa kujina yi we ni yanu disema ye de to wodi.
Yeah, very specific. You are making any specific call again because of all the cases you highlighted, aside the majority which specifically mentions the president, and even of which they are not being convicted, the other seems to be a role played by a relative. The president cannot be faulted largely by what the president said.
If you look at the case of Airbus scandal, the government official one was dominant. If you look at the investigations by the OSP, there was no dispute as to who government official one was. There was no dispute as to who government official one was. But the truth of the matter is that whereas all the other matters have been tried and the corporates, there have been some determination here and there outside of the jurisdiction. In the specific references to the parties involved who are Ghanaians, there hasn't been any serious inquiry into the matters. And so it becomes necessary at this point for us to have that investigations because they are recurrent. And if those investigations don't happen, you and I won't know who is what and who is who in this matter. And so the investigation is